Imagine for a moment that you're at a high-end store. You walk in, and on one side you see a rack of clothes marked down to 70% off, with big red stickers, piles of them available in every size, practically begging for you to take them. On the other side, there's a jacket hanging alone, no discount, no fanfare, just sitting there quietly. Which one pulls your attention more? Chances are, it's not the pile with the flashing sale signs. It's the single piece that feels rare, like you've stumbled upon something special that not everyone will get their hands on. Now, what's fascinating is this is exactly how attraction works. Scarcity creates value. When something is rare, when it's not available at every corner, we instinctively want it more. This principle is everywhere in life, but nowhere does it play out more powerfully than in relationships. And here's where it flips the script. Women are not magnetized to the man who is always available, who never sets boundaries, who constantly seeks validation. They are drawn to the man who can walk away. Because that man communicates without saying a word. I am not desperate for anyone's attention. I know my worth, and if this isn't right, I will not cling. Think about the difference that energy creates. A man who is constantly chasing, constantly bending, constantly probing, he's like that discount rack. Always available, always trying to sell himself. And just like in that store, when something is overexposed, when it's too easy, when it requires no effort to obtain, we don't value it. We may notice it, we may glance at it, but it doesn't capture us. The man who holds himself differently, who isn't afraid to let go, who doesn't need to convince someone to choose him, that man becomes magnetic. Walking away doesn't mean arrogance, and it doesn't mean playing games. It's not about pretending you don't care when you actually do. It's about genuinely knowing that your life has value, that your time and energy are precious, and that you refuse to waste them where they're not appreciated. When a man lives with that mindset, women feel it. They feel the strength in his decisions. They sense the depth of his self-respect. And that scarcity of energy, that refusal to be just another option, turns him into something rare. Something to be noticed, pursued, and respected. The truth is, women are not looking for the man who is glued to them, who fears losing them at every turn. That doesn't spark desire, it sparks suffocation. What they are looking for is the man who is confident enough to say, if this isn't mutual, I'm not staying. That kind of man understands that he doesn't have to fight to keep someone who doesn't see his value, because his value isn't dependent on being chosen. His value already exists with or without that relationship. And here's the beautiful paradox. When a man holds that standard, when he's willing to walk away, it often has the exact opposite effect of what most men fear. Instead of pushing women away, it pulls them closer. Because suddenly, he's not like everyone else. He's not clamoring for attention. He's not trying to sell himself. He's saying, in his actions, I am the prize. I don't need to prove it, and I don't need to convince you. That energy is irresistible because it's rare. We live in a world where availability is everywhere. People can swipe right and find 100 new options in a night. But in that ocean of availability, the one person who stands out is the one who doesn't try to be everything to everyone. He's selective. He's deliberate. He knows that not every opportunity deserves his time, and not every person earns the right to be close. That scarcity makes his presence valuable, and it makes women take notice in a way they don't with someone who's always trying too hard. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where you're tempted to over-explain, over-invest, or overstay, remember this: Walking away is not losing. Walking away is declaring, I don't need to beg to be valued. If this doesn't align, I will find where it does. And in that moment, you instantly separate yourself from the crowd. You move from the discount rack to the rare piece everyone wants to touch, but not everyone gets to take home. That's the power of scarcity, and that's why women only want the man who walks away. Let's talk about something that is so underestimated, but makes all the difference when it comes to attraction: emotional self-control. You see, people often assume that confidence is about being loud, dominant, or showing off. But true confidence is quiet. It's calm. It's the ability to stay centered no matter what's happening around you. And when a man shows emotional self-control, he communicates something that is unbelievably attractive. He is not controlled by outside forces, and he is certainly not controlled by desperation for someone's attention. Think about how often we see the opposite play out. A man meets a woman, and instantly he's over-invested. He starts texting too much, over-analyzing every response, getting nervous if she takes longer than usual to reply. He's reactive. He's on edge. He's trying to get her validation, and in the process, he's handing over all of his power. And here's the thing: when a woman sees that, when she feels that his emotions rise and fall entirely based on her responses, it doesn't feel like love or deep attraction. It feels like instability. It feels like pressure. It feels like he's not in control of himself, and that instantly lowers the level of respect and desire. Contrast that with a man who is grounded. A man who, when she takes a while to respond, doesn't spiral into insecurity. When she tests his patience or challenges his boundaries, he doesn't lose his cool or rush to win her back. He doesn't get rattled because his sense of self is not dependent on her behavior. That steadiness, that ability to stay calm and composed, tells her something vital. He's not desperate, and he's not fragile. He is secure in himself, and if this connection works, great. But if not, his life doesn't fall apart. That kind of control is magnetic because it makes her feel like she's dealing with a man who knows who he is. Women are incredibly intuitive. They can sense neediness almost instantly, and they can sense strength just as quickly. When a man demonstrates emotional control, it makes her feel safe. Safe to be herself, safe to relax, safe to trust his leadership in a relationship. And more importantly, it creates desire. Because attraction isn't born from someone who needs you to complete them. Attraction is born from someone who is already complete and still chooses you. That choice has weight. That choice feels powerful. Now, let me be clear. Emotional self-control doesn't mean being cold, robotic, or shutting down your feelings. It doesn't mean being detached to the point where you never express care or affection. That's not attractive either. What it does mean is that you are able to manage your emotions instead of being managed by them. You feel the excitement, you feel the care, you feel the desire, but you don't let those feelings dictate behavior that comes across as clingy or unstable. You channel those emotions in a way that aligns with your standards and your self-respect. There's something deeply compelling about a man who doesn't need to rush, who doesn't panic when things don't go exactly his way, who doesn't crumble when a woman pushes back. That's when she looks at him differently. She begins to test him less because she sees he won't be shaken. She invests more because she knows his approval isn't handed out freely to anyone who asks for it. He's steady, and that steadiness allows her to lean in with trust and with desire. I want you to think about the last time you saw someone lose their composure. Maybe they got jealous too quickly. Maybe they overreacted to something small. Maybe they begged when they should have walked away. Did it make you respect them more? Or did it make you feel like they lacked control, like they were too dependent on the other person's actions? Now imagine the opposite. Imagine the person who handled it with calm, who didn't overreact, who didn't let emotions drive them into insecurity. That person instantly commands more respect. They instantly become more attractive because they've shown they are not controlled by fear or need. And here's the twist. When a man has that kind of self-control, it doesn't push women away. It pulls them closer because suddenly she realizes she can't manipulate him with silence. She can't shake him with mixed signals. She can't control his mood with her attention. That makes him stand out from almost every other man she meets. And when she realizes he won't bend just to keep her, she starts wanting to rise to meet him. She invests more. She shows up more fully. She values him more deeply because he values himself enough to stay grounded no matter what. This is the power of emotional self-control. It's not about playing games, and it's not about pretending you don't care. It's about truly being okay with yourself, with or without someone else's validation. And that makes you incredibly attractive because nothing is more appealing than a man who chooses a woman not from need, but from strength. That's why women only want the man who walks away. One of the most powerful signals a man can send in a relationship dynamic is the ability to detach. Not cold detachment, not emotional shutdown, but the kind of inner strength that says, I don't need to hold on to anything that isn't good for me. That kind of detachment doesn't repel women. It fascinates them. It creates a gravitational pull. Because when a man shows that he can walk away, that he can let go instead of clinging, what he's really showing is strength. You see, most people are controlled by fear. Fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of losing the person they've invested in. And when that fear runs the show, it drives behavior that's desperate, clingy, or suffocating. A man who can't detach from someone who doesn't value him ends up lowering his standards just to stay in the game. He accepts poor treatment, he ignores red flags, he sacrifices his own peace to avoid the discomfort of walking away. And that's where attraction evaporates. Because deep down, women don't want a man who is trapped by fear. They want a man who is free. Detachment signals freedom. It says, I am not chained to the outcome. I am not chained to how you treat me. I want you, but I don't need you to define me. That difference is everything. Because when a man is unattached to needing a certain reaction, he becomes lighter, calmer, more magnetic. He's not performing for approval. He's not chasing. He's not bending over backwards to be chosen. He's simply showing up as himself, and if it aligns, great. If not, he moves on. That's a level of strength that women crave because it makes them feel like they're dealing with someone who has true self-possession. And it's not just about the external actions, it's about the internal energy. A man who clings has an energy of lack. It feels heavy, it feels like pressure. A man who can detach radiates abundance. He doesn't act like this is his one and only chance. He knows life is full of opportunities, full of connections, full of possibilities. That abundance mindset makes him stand out because it tells a woman that he is not operating from scarcity. He is not waiting for her to complete him. He is already whole. Now, here's the paradox. When a man can truly detach, when he's not afraid to walk away, that's when women chase harder. Because suddenly, he's not playing the role that most men fall into, the role of proving, convincing, pleading. Instead, he's saying with his actions, I won't lower my standard just to keep you here. I won't trade myself, respect for temporary attention. And that strength makes her curious. It makes her wonder what's different about him. It makes her want to earn the connection, because she realizes it won't be handed over just because she exists. There's another layer to this. Detachment also creates space. When you're willing to walk away, you're not forcing something that isn't ready. You're not chasing someone who isn't invested. You give the other person the freedom to decide if they want to step up, and that freedom often makes them step closer. Because people don't value what's forced on them, they value what they choose. By detaching, by showing strength, you allow her to choose you. And when she does, it's deeper, because she knows she wasn't pressured into it. But here's the challenge. Detachment takes courage. It's not easy to look at someone you're drawn to and say, if you can't meet me here, I'm willing to walk away. It feels risky, because there's a chance she won't come back, but that's exactly what makes it powerful. That courage is the strength she feels. That's why it's attractive, because it proves you are not ruled by fear. And when you are not ruled by fear, you instantly rise above the noise of every man who is still begging for attention. What most men don't realize is that detachment is not about being cold or uncaring. It's not about withholding affection or playing hard to get. It's about having enough self-respect to say, I won't attach myself to a situation that doesn't serve me. And that mindset changes everything. It changes how you text, how you show up on dates, how you respond to challenges. You no longer invest in someone who hasn't earned it. You no longer panic when things don't go your way. You no longer stay in situations that drain you because you know your worth isn't tied to keeping something that doesn't fit. And women feel that. They feel the difference between a man who's clinging out of fear and a man who's present out of choice. One is heavy, the other is light. One feels like a burden, the other feels like a gift. And that's why detachment is such a powerful signal of strength. It's not about being distant, it's about being free. And freedom is irresistible because it means you're not trapped by fear, you're not trapped by need, and you're not trapped by anyone else's approval. That's why women only want the man who walks away. One of the most underrated qualities a man can show in dating and relationships is the ability to set boundaries. And the truth is, boundaries aren't just about protecting yourself. They're also one of the most attractive things you can ever communicate. Because when a man sets boundaries, when he makes it clear what he will and won't accept, he's sending a message that he has standards. And standards are powerful. They show self-respect, they show strength, and they show that he is not willing to compromise his value just to be liked. When a man doesn't set boundaries, what happens? He becomes easy to manipulate. He allows himself to be taken for granted. He agrees to things that don't feel right to him because he doesn't want to upset her or risk losing her. But that kind of behavior doesn't inspire attraction, it erodes it. Because what he's really communicating is, I will do anything to keep you, even if it means betraying myself. And the moment someone betrays themselves, they stop being respected. You can't admire someone who won't even protect their own dignity. Now, compare that to the man who is willing to say no. The man who says, I like you, but I won't tolerate disrespect. Or the man who doesn't keep chasing when a woman is giving him mixed signals. Or the man who doesn't let someone back into his life after they've repeatedly crossed the line without accountability. That man is walking proof that his boundaries matter more than temporary attention. And when a woman sees that, it flips the entire dynamic, because suddenly she realizes he won't let her, or anyone else, walk all over him. He values himself too much. Boundaries aren't about being controlling. They're not about telling someone else how to behave. They're about you deciding what you allow into your world. It's saying, this is what I will accept, and this is what I won't. And when you hold those boundaries consistently, you create a natural filter. The wrong people fall away, and the right people step up. Women in particular are drawn to men who have this kind of clarity because it shows leadership. It shows that he's not afraid to enforce standards, not just in dating, but in every part of his life. And here's the paradox. Boundaries don't push people away. They actually make people come closer. Because when someone knows where you stand, they can trust you. They know you won't say one thing and then tolerate another. They know you won't hide your truth to please them. And trust is born in that clarity. Women don't want to feel like they're in control of everything, like they can dictate every aspect of a man's behavior. Deep down, what they want is a man who can hold his ground. A man who won't compromise on what matters most to him. That steadiness makes her feel safe. And when you think about it, a lack of boundaries is actually a lack of respect for yourself, yes, but also for the relationship. Because without boundaries, you're saying, I don't care about the quality of this connection. I just care about keeping it alive at any cost. But when you have boundaries, you're saying, I care enough to protect the quality of my life and my relationships. I want depth, not just surface level attachment. That difference is what separates the man who gets overlooked from the man who gets pursued. The man who can walk away when his boundaries are crossed isn't bitter. He isn't cold. He isn't punishing anyone. He's simply showing that his self-respect isn't up for negotiation. And ironically, that strength doesn't make women lose interest. It makes them pay attention. Because when she knows you're not afraid to walk away, she knows she has to show up differently. She knows your attention has value, and she knows it's not something she can take lightly. Boundaries are where desire grows. They create polarity. They make the dynamic interesting, because she knows you're not just another man willing to bend at every turn. You're someone with a backbone, someone with self-respect, someone who won't compromise, who he is just to keep a connection alive. And that's the kind of man women can't help but admire. That's why women only want the man who walks away. One of the most powerful things a man can ever communicate in dating and relationships is the power of choice. And by that, I don't mean the act of choosing one person over another. I mean the deeper energy of knowing that you have options. Knowing that you don't need to cling to one outcome. Knowing that you don't have to settle for someone who doesn't value you because your life is already full. That mindset changes everything. When a man believes that his happiness depends entirely on one woman, he becomes trapped. Every text, every call, every smile from her becomes the center of his world. He starts overthinking every little detail because he's put all of his self-worth into being chosen. And when you put someone on that kind of pedestal, they stop respecting you. Not because they're cruel, but because human nature doesn't admire desperation. We admire strength. We admire independence. We admire the person who chooses us even though they don't need us. That's where the power of choice comes in. A man who can walk away isn't doing it out of spite or arrogance. He's doing it because he recognizes that his value isn't defined by whether one person chooses him or not. He knows that life is abundant, that opportunities exist everywhere, and that he will never have to lower his standards just to avoid being alone. And when a man carries himself with that kind of certainty, women feel it immediately. It's not about bragging. It's not about showing off. It's not about saying, I can have anyone I want. That's ego. The true power of choice is quiet. It's calm. It's the way a man lives when he doesn't chase every person who shows him a little attention. It's the way he walks away from games, from disrespect, from half-hearted effort. It's the way he invests only in people who invest back. That energy is rare, and that rarity is what makes it so attractive. Because here's the truth. Women don't want to feel like they are your only option because you couldn't do better. They want to feel like they were chosen when you had plenty of options, and you still decided on them. That's what makes them value the connection. That's what makes them step up, invest more, and give more. Because they know you didn't just default to them out of fear of being alone. You actively chose them out of strength. Think about the opposite for a second. When a man doesn't believe he has choice, when he convinces himself that this is the only woman he could ever have, he starts overcompensating. He tolerates poor treatment. He accepts crumbs. He loses his edge, his confidence, his masculinity. And eventually, she loses interest. Not because she's cruel, but because she doesn't feel like she's with a man who values himself enough to say no. Without choice, he becomes a man stuck in scarcity, and scarcity kills attraction. But when a man has choice, real choice, he never acts from fear. He doesn't chase validation, he doesn't settle, and he doesn't cling. He doesn't need to because he knows he'll be fine regardless. That doesn't mean he doesn't love deeply or care passionately. It just means he loves from a place of strength and not from a place of need. And that difference changes everything. A man who lives with the power of choice is more attractive, not only because of how he carries himself, but because of what it does to the woman he's with. It creates a dynamic where she feels inspired to give more, to meet him at his level, because she knows she isn't with a man who's just there out of fear of being alone. She's with a man who could walk away at any moment, but doesn't, because he truly sees her value. That's the kind of choice that makes her value him in return. And that's why women only want the man who walks away. There's something deeply powerful about mystery, not the kind of mystery that comes from being closed off or refusing to share who you are, but the kind of mystery that comes from not giving everything away at once. When a man can walk away, when he doesn't cling, when he doesn't over-explain himself or constantly try to prove his worth, he naturally creates space for curiosity. And that curiosity is what fuels desire. Think about it. When someone is too available, when they tell you everything, when they're always around and never leave you guessing, it's comfortable, but it's not exciting. There's no anticipation, no sense of discovery. But when a man knows how to hold back just enough, when he allows space instead of trying to fill every silence, when he walks away instead of overstaying, he becomes intriguing. She starts to wonder what's going on in his mind, what he's focused on, what gives him that unshakable confidence. That mystery makes her lean in instead of pull away. Most men, when they meet a woman they really like, fall into the trap of trying too hard to be understood. They think, if I can just explain how much I care, if I can just show her how committed I am, if I can just make her see everything I bring to the table, then she'll want me. But in doing that, they strip away the very thing that makes them attractive. They remove the mystery. They reveal too much, too soon, and what might have been exciting turns into predictability. But the man who can walk away is different. He doesn't feel the need to announce everything he's thinking. He doesn't feel the need to broadcast his intentions at every step. He allows things to unfold naturally. He knows that his actions speak louder than words, and he doesn't feel pressured to prove himself. That calm restraint leaves her curious, and curiosity is one of the strongest sparks of attraction there is. This isn't about playing games. It's not about pretending to be someone you're not, or withholding love out of fear. It's about trusting that you don't need to overcompensate. It's about knowing that you bring value by simply being who you are, and that you don't need to overshare or overstay to be seen. By holding yourself with that kind of quiet strength, you allow her to wonder, to discover, to invest in learning more about you. And that journey of discovery keeps the spark alive. Mystery also comes from having a life outside of her. A man who is fully immersed in his own passions, who is focused on his goals, who invests in his friendships, his growth, his dreams. That man is endlessly fascinating. Why? Because he's not orbiting around her. He's not dependent on her for entertainment or fulfillment. He's building something of his own, and that makes him magnetic. She doesn't know exactly what's driving him, but she sees the energy, the focus, the ambition, and she wants to be part of it. And here's what's even more interesting. Mystery doesn't just attract, it sustains attraction. At the beginning of a relationship, it's easy to feel excited because everything is new. But as time goes on, what keeps desire alive is not routine, it's curiosity. It's that feeling of, I don't have you all figured out yet. A man who never chases too hard, who doesn't need to overshare, who has his own identity and his own life, continues to give her something to lean into. He's not a puzzle she solved on day one. He's someone who keeps unfolding over time. So when a man walks away, or when he holds back instead of giving too much, he's not losing anything. He's gaining intrigue. He's positioning himself as someone who doesn't need to fill every gap with reassurance, someone who is confident enough to let her sit with the unknown. And that unknown is where desire lives, because people don't crave what they fully possess. They crave what still feels just out of reach. That's why women only want the man who walks away.